Hey, everybody, welcome to Love and Relo, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I'm so blessed and honored to be here with my good friend, Michael Hughes, founder and owner of BetterGo. What's going on, Michael? How you doing?
What's up, my friend? How you doing? I'm doing great.
It's good to see you, as always. I think last time I saw you was probably, Boston, probably?
I think it was in Boston, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, it's good to
Well, we
see
see each
you,
other
man.
quite frequently on the circuit, so it could be
Oh
anywhere.
yeah. Well, I got to get out more if that's possible. I feel like there's so many places and things that are going on these days. I'm not even getting to anymore, and it's just
There's a
gotta get
lot
out.
going on. Well, I might see you
It's a
next
lot.
next week in Dallas if you're out there.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, coming to Dallas soon. What are you
Yeah,
coming
I'll be in
for?
Dallas for a couple days.
NTRP?
Yep.
Okay, nice. Hey, get in the comments if you're watching right now. Check in with us. Let us know who you are, where you are, what you're up to. Give your company a shout out. Tell us a joke. Make fun of one of us, preferably him. Yeah, get in
We'll
here.
leave you
Just
out of
kidding.
this.
Just kidding. Just kidding. Maybe. Let's see. We got people checking in here. What's up, Adrian? Really good to see you. Glomo HQ. What's up, HQ in the house? We got Michael with a smiley face. Sometimes it doesn't port over. It's annoying. Yeah, you got some stuff going on though. You got some new stuff cooking, I've been noticing. What have you been up to lately, Michael?
Indeed, man. COVID wasn't the only thing that shook things up for us, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So you got a new company, new brand that you're repping. There we got William Joyce checking in here. What's up, howdy, Will? So tell
Yo,
us
Will, how
about
you
tell us
doing?
about Better Go. What's going on with Better Go?
Yeah, right. So, I mean, as most of the folks know, I relocated from overseas. I was an expat for about 15 years or so.
Yeah,
Cairo, South Korea, China. And moving back to the US, repatriation is a very fun ride. It's a bit bumpy at some points, but
mm-hmm.
very interesting. So, one of the things that I decided to do was actually invest back in our industry. The way I was looking at it is like, hey, I've been in the industry for about 12 years, had great opportunities, great insights to client development, moves across the world, etc. But where can I give back? What can I give back? And the message came back quite clear: is like, well, put your money where your mouth is. If you want innovation, invest in it, and that's what we've done. That's what we built.
Wow, interesting. I love it. Put your money where your mouth is. That's
Hey, Drew.
that that's always fun. Drew, love everything you're doing. That's cool.
Thank you, my friend.
Roberta,
Roberta,
hello.
hello.
Brazil in the house.
Yeah.
Love it. David Yakum, Coleman checking in. What's up, David? Good to see you. So put your money where your mouth is. Scary proposition. What are you endeavoring to do with Better Go?
Yeah, that's a great question. As you know, from an entrepreneur perspective as well, unfortunately, everyone gets to see kind of the final result and like, oh wow, where did this come from? They don't know the years behind the making, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak. And I remember now it's almost 6 years ago. It was back in, I think it was about 2017. I knew I wanted to do something. I didn't know what. And that's where that kind of message came through. And I was like, all right, well, I started putting money away for it, started saving and putting money away. So I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet, but at least I have something that I can build off of. And I think that's kind of the first step to anything. If you're going to build, whether it's your health, your nutrition, a business, relationships, you got to get those foundations in. And
Gotta have the
quite frankly, if
foundation.
you're not putting the work in, it's not going to happen. So I didn't want that to be the case for me. And I kind of just figured, hey, if you're going to make this happen, you got to have capital. And that's when we started to do that. So the first step we did actually was we founded the company My Cultural Hub. This is the parent company. It's, if you think about it, more of like kind of an incubator for relocation startups. This is
Okay.
our investment vehicle. And right now we have two brands that we're working on, two brands that we're investing in. One is BetterGo, what we'll focus on today. Another, which is in beta right now, it's an AI program for consumers. It's for people who are working with supply chains, but it's a way to streamline those interactions through interactive AVI. So yeah, exciting stuff that we're working on and trying to develop, and it's all from experience, right? I mean, both you and I have been in the real field for a while. We've serviced a lot of people, a lot of families. I've been in the homes of many of these folks that are moving and sat at their kitchen tables for 2-3 hours talking about their experience in their relocation, and you know what? And yeah, I think that from that insight, it's really helped to see where an impact can be made. And I think that's an important part too, is that when I set out to start the endeavor, I really didn't want to create something that already existed. So there's a lot of phenomenal companies out there, a lot of great DSPs, wonderful RMCs. They've built beautiful brands over the last almost century, to be honest. And I didn't want to step into that because I felt like that had been done. That mission had been accomplished.
Yep.
Where's the growth? What we can do? What can we do something new? And that's where I feel BetterGo comes into that play. It's not replacing anything that exists. It's making it better. It's improving it. It's adding an extra depth to that experience that, unfortunately, for the way structured relocations are at the moment, it's never been within reach.
Yeah, we're gonna dive into the specifics because I really want to understand like kind of the mechanics of what it is, how it works, and the problem you're trying to solve. But I love what you're saying there about uh, focusing on what you know. That's what I'm getting. A lot of entrepreneurs, they might be in the moving business, but they say, "Hey, I want to go open a restaurant." It's like, well, do what you know, right? Don't go try to open a food truck. When you've been a mover or a DSP or whatever your whole life. Focus on what you know, and so I think that's always great because you're drawing from so much institutional knowledge, whether you're aware of it or not. That's going to help you so much.
I would agree. I'd say the only fallacy in that is that it kind of denotes that you rely on yourself for development and progress. And I'm not sure about you. I'd love to hear about your story, the nitty gritty. I've had some insight into the past, but man, the relationships that I've developed from day one to now and the people that I've interacted with, like I've got a milestone basically outline of all these interactions that have been absolutely instrumental in changing the company, the focus, the development, etc. And I really attribute it to those conversations I had with other founders, other owners, business owners, coffee shop chats, you name it. And all of those have made me better at what I'm trying to do with the company.
Yeah.
And the other thing is too, that I found really, really interesting, and people probably don't know this, but I've actually, before I even went in the whole entrepreneurial journey, I had a life coach for a year. She was a
Really?
licensed therapist, and she worked with entrepreneurs, she worked with tech startups, etc. And we just really worked through what's my intention, what do I actually want to do, and then once we got probably like 6 months into that, clarifying a vision, then it went into articulating how you're going to do this, what are the avenues, all that kind of stuff. So it's really that growth journey. The person I started this company 3 years ago, completely different. And maybe that's the beauty of it too, because it's almost like you got to give up who you think you are and start adapting to what your customers need, what the industry needs, and all that. So it's like,
let's debate this here. Let's debate this because you asked a really good question, and I'm getting crucified here in the comments here. By the way, thanks to William Taylor. Get in the comments if you think I'm crazy. If you want to insult me or pick a fight with me, please do it. It makes for better TV. Get in here and we're going to talk about: do you stick to what you know? Do you try something new, or is it some sort of a blend and a hybrid of all of those? Check in with us here. We got people checking in from Austin. Jay Hall, USI Law checking in. Sheila Benavides checking in here as
Sheila.
well. Yep, she's agreeing with you there. William Taylor, here we go.
Oh, hey, Will.
Watch out. William Taylor's coming after me. No, William, good point. So William says, really sounds like a fixed mindset, Ben. He's smarmy. I love it. Why not push yourself to try something new? You know what? Good point, William. William was a lawyer by trade.
Interesting.
I think, and then he was a corporate, and then he was now he's selling DSP services. So William, William's over here. Yes, William. Okay, let's talk about this. So what I'm trying to say here is I stuck to the industry I know. So I'm in the global mobility industry. That's my niche, right? So when I talk to people in recruiting and they're like talking about niches and I'm like, oh, global mobility, they think it's like this micro tiny niche. Little do they know there's all these sub verticals of all these services that are offered from real estate to mortgage to corporate housing to real, to moving to, et cetera, right? And I stuck to that industry because I know it. I have relationships there. I have relationship capital there that I can draw on, right? So when I make a phone call, people know who I am. They take my call. They do business with me. They already trust me, et cetera. I know what I'm talking about. I am not selling household. Well, I do a little bit, but I don't own a moving company. I wanted to go out and buy a moving company. And my wife said, Ben, you don't even know how to change your own oil. You go into the warehouse with your shiny shoes and your suits on, and they laugh at you and they start making fun of you. And they say, you're going dancing. You know, I mean, these are the kind of issues I have when I walk around moving and storage operations. So she's like, why would you want to buy a moving company when the movers hate you? And I'm like, that's a fair point. I really actually wanted to be on the consulting side because that's kind of where I'm at. I'm a relationships person. I'm not a men in trucks kind of person. I'm a relationships person. And that's what I did. And we do recruiting, we do M&A advisement, we do video production, stuff that I know, but we do it in the industry that I know. And I think that's what I was
Get
really
that,
trying to say
yeah.
here.
I would say, man, it's your journey. It's funny that you had that conversation with your wife. I had that conversation very early on with a business owner, well known in our relo field, and he looked at me and said, "Why would you want to buy someone when you clearly have something you want to create?" And it was kind of like that one nugget that I was like, "Yeah, you're right." Maybe it was the confidence I needed. Maybe it was a belief in myself. I don't know, but to not leave you too far out in the cold. I would say that you're absolutely right in the sense of do what you know and that you have the networks, you have the relationships, you have the experience behind it, but don't let that get in the way of you trying to do something new or to do something different. And the one thing for clear 100%, like no business gets off the ground without partnerships. Like it's
Yeah.
those partnerships, it's the lifeblood. A lot of times it's silent investors, it's relationships behind the scenes, it's an open door. It's a guy that calls you up on a Thursday and say, "Hey, I'm having lunch with XYZ client. They need you. Here's their number. Contact them XYZ." So it's those kind of opportunities that really change your trajectory. So I absolutely
Yeah.
agree with you that, but I just wouldn't say, stick to only what you know, because in entrepreneurship, you have to grow. You have to move beyond that.
Yeah. This really interesting and it's great
Yeah.
points.
I'll give you a
What's
case
up,
in point too. Actually,
Janet?
it's a kind of a wart, if you will. It's not very pretty, but hey, what the hell? We'll be open and honest.
Oh, those are the
The
best
very
ones.
first client that believed in us, she might be on here, so she knows who she is. We opened our doors March 30th. It was the very first large pharmaceutical company. And I went in with this idea of what BetterGo is going to do. And it wasn't the solution they needed. And because of that experience, though, we completely changed our trajectory. We're now NPI certified. We've got a whole different track that we've gone through. But because of that experience, it really highlighted, I got to change the way we're going to do this if I'm going to achieve the mission I want. So sometimes those kind of things can be a good kick in the ass, if you will.
I know I
Sorry.
love it. And it talks to product marketing. No, it's okay. It's not a family show anymore.
It's all adults.
It's adult 18 and over, this show.
Theoretically.
Sheila's saying, I'm glad I ventured out from what I know, or I would have never taken the chance on the relocation industry. Well, welcome, Sheila. I'm glad you're here. And once you come, you can't get out. I think you bring up a really good point. I love what you're talking about, because we call that product market fit, right? You think you have a solution, you think everyone has this problem, you go to market and the market tells you, actually, we don't have this problem, or we don't care to solve it, or we kind of like having this problem because maybe we monetize in other areas, we actually make money off this problem, so don't go solving it because you're going to put us out of a job. So you start to run into all sorts of feedback from the market. And then what I love about what you're talking about is you adapt, you're nimble. And that's one of the cool strengths of being a startup and being kind of amorphous, right? You can change. So how did you change the product to meet the need?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I mean, it's definitely a road of changes and journeys, etc. And those inhibitors, whether it's a problem that they didn't want to solve, I like the dynamic of that because that's quite interesting to think about. But for me, and when I was working with my life coach, it was actually an ego thing. It was getting past what you think is right and really listening to the experience of other people and saying, "Hey, if this is not what I think they need, then what the heck am I getting wrong here?" And kind of adapting that. So that was the first step in acknowledging that. The second step was looking at, well, if this is an idea that most people are saying they want and they need I did a lot of market tests and things like that. I had interviews with HR folks and sat down with consumers directly as well and said, if this existed, would you want it? Did kind of that research in advance, polled the audience, so to speak. And what I realized is what we were missing is now actually our selling point. And the selling point is that we are registered, we're credentialed individuals that we call mobility mentors, but they have not only ICF certification, they have EMCC, they have NCC, they have certifications from counseling, therapy, etc. And we're a national provider identifier as well. So that means that health insurance companies, etc., we've gone the route of, and this is from the advice of so many people, that we're looking at how do we solve the EAP program from a mobility perspective. And the conversation you had earlier about like with recruitment, I'm in the same field because they're like, mobility what? Like that doesn't even exist. And you have these amazing, really big, even some of them are unicorns you've probably heard about on CNN or wherever. But they don't solve the mobility problem. What we do is we say, hey, every one of our mobility mentors, first and foremost, are certified professionals in a mental health cognition. But beyond that, they've relocated firsthand themselves. So they get it intimately. They know what this is about. And then the last piece is actually diversity. So the other thing that I looked at too is like, and I don't want to stereotype here because there's, we're a very big industry.
Go for it. Stereotype away. It's just LinkedIn. What's the worst that could happen?
But generally speaking, if you look at the demographics of the support mechanisms that exist in the relocation space, they don't necessarily match the demographics of the people that are actually moving. So that said, we wanted Hindi speakers, we wanted Malayalam speakers, we wanted people from Singapore, we wanted people from Latin America that speak Portuguese, or people from Argentina. So what we're really looking at is matching those soft skills that it's not going to be on your LinkedIn profile. You're not going to find our mobility mentors because you looked up a certification or something like that. These are individuals that we've worked with, that we interviewed, that we went through a credentialing process with them to identify like what skill sets do you have. And some of them are nutritionists, some of them are dietitians, others are family therapists, others are people who work with children with disabilities, even all the way to the extreme spectrum of individuals who work with crisis management, families that have abuse backgrounds, all these kind of things. And you don't understand, when you're relocating a whole family, that triggers things. And a family member may not be comfortable to go to their HR and say, hey, listen, XYZ happened to, my family member, my daughter, my son, whatever. And this moving, uprooting, changing the whole environment is really setting them on edge. What can I do? Because that's a private issue. You're not going to talk about that. But you can come into our resource center, you can come into our website and search for these categories absolutely confidentially and find people that have that skill set. And more importantly, people that are certified, people that have that credentialing behind them that say, yeah, I work with trauma. I work with individuals who have these issues and I have the licensing, I have the proof, etc. So yeah, I'll get off the podium, but
it's really interesting. No, I want to hear all about it. And I want to just welcome some people that are tuning in here. Hit that like button, get in the comments. I want to hear from you. What do you think about this EAP for global mobility? I want to explore this and double click into this. It's a really interesting concept. And I love that phrase and the way you put it. Janet Turner checking in. What's up, OG super producer? Jason Hall,
hey, Jason,
from USI Law. What's up, Jay Hall? Good to see you. Appreciate you getting everybody on the show over there at USI Law. Jill Guzda.
Hey, Jill.
Jillian's a sweetheart. Love Jill. What's up, Jilly? So is this an EAP program for global mobility? Like, how does this thing work?
It is. Essentially, that's exactly what it is. So it's a support mechanism for employees, particularly those employees that are in transition, and it's matching them with counselors that help them whatever specific needs they have.
I got a question. I mean, real talk here. Can a move coordinator call in like July and just be like, I need some counseling? I feel like this should go both ways. I feel like suppliers should get in on this too, because there's sometimes you got to talk me off the ledge here. Because I mean, like Saturday afternoon, I'm working 6.5 days a week during the summertime. Files up to my eyeball. I can't see over the manila folders. I'm dying over here.
That's super interesting. I have not thought about that yet, so I'm going to earmark that, kind of put it on the back burner. But that's alongside.
I'm only half joking.
No, seriously. There was a fantastic podcast a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about displaced talent, and it was really interesting. We have a lot of crises and things like that around the world. People are driven out from either war or for whatever reasons, and that doesn't really touch into the white collar relocation that you and I know, or we work or interact with. And that touched my heart a little bit. I was like, okay, wonder what we could do from a BetterGo perspective to just be a resource for that. I mean, that's not our main focus, but like if I was ever to start, implementing like a philanthropic approach, or what can I do for volunteer to work with NGOs, etc. Man, I would love to sit down with that guy who's, was displaced from Libya or out of Africa or wherever the locations may be. And he's like, hey, I was a lawyer back home and now I'm driving a cab in New York. How do I upskill? How do I get back to the life I used to have?
Yeah.
If I could be part of that story, I think that would be that's a blessing.
I mean, you're really hitting a nerve there too, because when you look at what's going on in Ukraine, you look at what's going on in Gaza, you look at what's going on around the world. I mean, gosh, Central America. I mean, there is a mass migration of people due to macro traumas right now going on that need support. And from you said philanthropic standpoint, wow, you really make a lot of sense there. We got people checking in here, get in the comments. I want to know, what do you think about this BetterGo idea, this EAP for global mobility, this crisis intervention hotline idea, when you got transferees and accompanying talent that are losing their minds in this process here? Let me know. Sandra Claire is saying, so interesting. We've needed like something like this for so long. Way to go, Michael. It's a good point. I mean, does this like touch a sense of purpose for you?
It does. Yeah. So, I mean, hey, we'll be real. My background, I went to seminary school. I went to theology. First time I went on assignment was actually a mission assignment. And my personal kind of revelation, if you want to call it that, was that if you really care about people, there's different ways to help them. And one of the most important things is to improve their life, to work in a way that can either help their environment, their quality of life, etc. So I went on a path that I started doing an MA with Harvard. I did sustainability, environmental management. I wound up dropping out of that because I realized that, hey, if I'm going to really make an impact for me personally, my road is through business. My road is through economic development. So for me, this is kind of like a mission completion. This is kind of like, hey, I found my spot where my journey has passed through in the past and gone through. I'm now at the point of, I know what I want to do. I know where I want to be, and I'm building the tools to make that happen. So yeah, that's, for me, it's a really exciting thing. And it's, I don't know, it feels like being home. It feels like who you are, right?
Yeah, and that's one of the beautiful parts of the entrepreneurial journey is you can create a job for yourself that speaks to your personal purpose and interests. And I'm blessed with that with Glomo, right? I create this funky, weird company that does a lot of different like stuff, but it just suits me and suits the culture that we've created. And I've been blessed enough to find people that also are wired that way and kind of come in and bring their own little spice to the sauce, and we all jam out together, doing this cool little thing, and it grows with them too, and their purpose when they bring their purposes. They're wildly different purposes, but we all have the same values, and so I think that's kind of the cool part of it. So I look forward to you getting to, like, as you continue down this journey and getting more opportunity to kind of build this thing out, and it evolves obviously over time, as it always does to meet the market demands and things that get thrown at you and different opportunities. I mean, I look forward to you having that, getting to enjoy that too.
Thank you, man. And I've enjoyed watching your journey. I told you before, privately, between you and I, that I remember being in China, I think it was Beijing at the time, and watching one of your first videos. You're at a gas station, you're talking about like what your dad said or something like that. I forget. But I was like, dude, Dad, there's something there. Nobody else was doing that. You were front line to that. And you know what I really like is that,
I remember that one.
Do you remember that one?
I got killed. I got killed for that one. You know why I got killed for that one? Because people got so mad. I was in Detroit and I was in this gas. I'm like, yo, I'm outside of this Tim Hortons right now and drinking this crappy Tim Hortons coffee. And I just had this thought, blah, 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 blah. And people are like, yeah, but why you got a bag on Tim Hortons for? I was like, it's not the poor people. Anyway.
I love it. Oh gosh, that's funny. Yeah. But what you've created out of that journey, man, it's incredibly exciting. Not only just the media business, but the recruiting business, and that's awesome. And you've all, I think what was really interesting is that you found a way to create something absolutely new that did not exist in our industry. Nobody had access to before. I mean, this is all before Glassdoor and all that kind of stuff. So in essence, you were kind of a window into what's happening in the global mobility world in a consolidated focus. Nobody else was doing that. But then you found a way to monetize that. And that for me is like, that's genius.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate. Well, it's kind of weird too. I mean, just to go off on this tangent for a second. Get in the comments here. I want to hear from y'all out there watching this. Hit that like button. Check in with us. Let us know who you are, where you are. We got some amazing friends checking in. Vinny Valverde.
Hey, Vinny.
What's up? Um, but it's funny with like we say like this, right? Like this love and reload thing, which this is our 4th year.
Wow.
Right? Is this our 4th year? 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24. This is our 5th year. We're in our 5th year now.
Goodness.
It's
Congrats.
bizarre. Thank you. Yeah, that's wild. Anyway, but when people talk about this is what people know because it's what they see, right? People only know what they see, right? It's like
Yeah.
the tip of the iceberg that's above the water. And people ask me all the time, well, how do you spend a lot of time on that, Ben? I mean, is that a good use of your time? I mean, this was like for 2 years I didn't see these questions.
Mm.
Is this a good use of your time? Like, gosh, you might need to be a little more serious about, what's going to really bring in the money. Well, because I mean, there's obviously there's no revenue model here. I don't charge people to be on this show. You never paid me anything to be on here. There's no, this isn't, sponsored by BetterGo or anything. Like some of these shows out here, you see some of these shows, they'll be like, oh, it was sponsored by RMC, blah, blah, blah. Sponsored by this mover, sponsored by, it's like we don't do that because we like to be independent and we like to be able to tell people the way it is. I don't want to hear, tomorrow from William Taylor's like, oh, you made me look bad. I'm sponsoring your show. And I tell William, go pound sand. William, you don't like it, whatever. I love William, but you know what I mean?
We love you, Will. Sorry.
Yeah, I got to pick on somebody. William's the best person to pick on. No, but you know what I mean? I want to be able to tell the truth and be honest with people. And if I want to talk about, Black history, or if I want to talk about LGBTQ, or if I want to talk about whatever I want to talk about, I don't want to have somebody come on here and like say, well, I'm pulling my sponsor dollars and never be dependent on somebody doing that. So we decouple Love and Reload from Glomo for that very reason. But at the same time, the show has given us unparalleled reach, relevancy, and relationships in the business that we then can leverage and draw upon for our other business interests, and that's kind of the way it works. And I think a lot of people for a long time didn't understand that that's the sauce. That's how it works. Because I used to get these long, emotionally charged LinkedIn messages from boomers. Love y'all, but some of y'all are wild. And they're like, Ben, you really need to be more serious out there. You can't just be playing on the internet all the time.
Yeah.
And I had to answer, and sometimes you it is what it is,
I'll tell you a funny joke.
I appreciate you saying it though.
This might fall on in that realm of I don't know, controversy, if you will. There's a funny joke. There's a a round table of executives. They're all talking about their employees and recruitment, talent retention, all that kind of stuff. And one of them just starts berating the millennials, and he's like, "I've had it. I've had enough with this. They think they're entitled. They think they deserve this. They deserve that." And one of the younger execs speaks up and says, "Excuse me, sir. You're talking about the children you raised, right?"
Yeah, you think that way. You don't like them, raise them different. What do you want?
Yeah, and I mean, no offense to those in the audience. It's just funny joke on that. But we're all connected.
Oh, they know their kids are crazy. Everybody in the audience knows their kids are crazy, and they did a mad job parenting. Every one of us knows in the back of our mind, we could have done better. But we get what we put out there, I guess, right? Yeah, 100%. That's great. I love it.
I hope that doesn't reflect poorly. But Ben,
whatever.
let me ask
People
you a question, if you don't mind, man. I'd love to, because you're talking about having the show and having people on, and for us, I mean, this is a godsend, to be honest. I was joking with a friend earlier. He's like, "Oh, so what are you doing this afternoon?" I was like, "I'm going to be on this show." He's like, "Really?" I was like, "Yeah, it's kind of my like Oprah and David Ramsey moment, where like after that, like." Oprah interviewed him and his career completely skyrocketed. Everything changed.
Everybody's gonna be putting money in little envelopes and saving, and you get a car.
Actually, that was funny because I watched that before we went on. But I wanted to ask you about your guests, man. Like a lot of times we talk about like piercing the veil, so to speak, where mobility sits at a certain level, decisions made somewhere else. Even it could go up to an HR VP and those kind of things, and they're not so concerned about mobility. But what if we even kind of jump that gap and start talking to the people that are making these business decisions? Like I'm talking about, you're bringing in Fortune 500 execs that are saying, why am I moving 500 people to Thailand, Bangkok for a automotive factory? Or, you're bringing in individuals that are VCs behind the scenes on the large RMC purchases. What do you see here? What do you see in that industry? Do you think there's value in bringing those voices into the table as well?
Maybe. So I think what's interesting is that a lot of CEOs have rotated themselves through a company and have been on assignment or relocated for
Mm,
business, right? I mean, that's kind of the track, right? These high potentials, I used to move a lot of people for GE, right? And they'd move them every
yeah.
9 months on a very concentrated fast track kind of program. They put them in manufacturing, they put them in marketing, they put them in, in the field at a manufacturing plant, whatever, right? And so
Mm,
they're doing all these things. So I think they felt the pain of relocation. So I think those folks would be receptive.
mm,
But there's a cognitive dissonance thing that sets in where if it was 20 years ago or 10 years ago, you forget how painful it is, right? I mean, that's the
yeah.
whole only reason the U-Haul has a business is people forget how much it sucks to move in a U-Haul, right? And so 5 years later,
That
they
should be
rent
their
a U-Haul
slogan.
all over again,
As
right?
soon as you forget, call us.
It's the same reason I have 2 kids and not 1, right? If my wife remembered how bad the first one was, she would have never done it again. But it's just in our brain, it's human aid. It's cognitive dissonance, right? And
That's
we
so
get
funny.
ourselves, we do it again, right?
Or
It's
the
just
good
how we are.
outweighs the bad if we try to
Yeah,
take the
God bless
positive.
us. That's what
Right.
we do, right? And
Yeah.
so I think that could be a market. I think the other
Mm,
the flip side of it is um when a CEO's stroking a check to move 500 people to Thailand to operate something, in the back of their mind, they're thinking, there's got to be a better way.
mm,
Do I really need to drop 50 grand or more per person and sign up for temp housing for 2 years and so on, so and so on, and the immigration bill, and you know what I mean, and so on and so forth. Isn't there a better way? And I think so. I think those folks might be receptive, but
mm.
it's project based to me. It's like
So
it's
true.
a point in time. So either they had a bad personal experience in recent memory, or there's a group move or something that's happening that's of a strategic importance, not just like that baseline activity, but there's like
Yeah.
a whoop kind of jump,
There's
right?
few companies like you mentioned GE. There's, I mean, Conti is famous for their training and development, Texas Instruments as well. But they're kind of an anomaly. They're not the main, but even their programs, phenomenal. 4 years in one location, learn this market, learn this skill, 4 years in the next location. And they're really building future leaders who understand intimately markets. One of the interesting thing is that, because I don't think we've talked about before, so maybe it could be a pretty good topic to the audience to chime in on,
Yeah.
is I witnessed one company, it's a pharmaceutical company, and for years, they were doing the 4 year assignment. Mr. European or Mr. North America goes over to Asia 4 years and comes back home. And I don't know who it was in their company, but they finally sat down and like, listen, this is not working. And they reversed the entire process. And they said, let's bring local talent to HQ and to these business units that are making these decisions, integrate them for 4 years, build their relationships, build their connections, and then send them back home to run indefinitely the departments that they left. And they've had phenomenal success with that. You're talking about, especially marketing firms as well, looking at how do you adapt to China's notoriously a very difficult market from a consumer perspective, marketing, etc. It's very hard to get there. What attracts them, what brings in dollars from that market, and they've had a lot of success coming back from a pharmaceutical perspective in selling in these countries. So much so that they're almost kind of a native brand to locals.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you bring up some interesting dynamics that it's made me think of this shift right now from China to Mexico, for
Mm,
instance, right? We saw, I think it was last month, it was announced that for the first time in 20 years, Mexican imports to the United States eclipse Chinese imports to the United States.
wow.
And I think some of this is a byproduct of the supply chain snafus that we saw, the one-way container issue that we see, where they stack up in Long Beach, issues with Chinese, with where we don't have maybe the trust right with China, and then the
IP as
security,
well was a big
IP
issue.
concern, yeah, all sorts of stuff, right? And geopolitically, and I think it's also a boon to us that a major trade partners are our southern border neighbor. I mean, I think that's really nice, right? And what we're doing, the challenges we're having right now with immigration and things like that, and the
Mm,
fact that if we're creating jobs south of the border, does that help, right? I mean, so there's a lot of really cool stuff happening right now. I say all that to say I think there's an opportunity. You go back. I'm going back to the question you asked me before about
Okay.
how do we get CEOs' attention around global mobility issues.
Yeah,
And when
that's a great way
global
to.
mobility sits at the strategy level and not the tactical execution level, we will start to get CEOs' attention. When we can make a case or we can empower our client contacts at corporations to make a case for why manufacturing needs to sit in Mexico versus China. And oh, by the way, here's how we get the talent there to stand that up and get it done in 6 months instead of 18 months. And the cost benefit to that, that's when we start to have that seat at the table, quote unquote, that we
Yeah.
desire. It reminds me right now, my client's got a CEO level contact. He's a moving company and he's dealing with the CEO of a company because the CEO's number one issue that's keeping them up at night, they're in this electric vehicle race, right?
Okay.
Everybody's racing to be, to at the forefront of this
Yeah,
EV
Volvo just
evolution,
announced their
right?
new one a day ago. Yeah, fully.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this company actually supports Volvo.
Oh,
And
cool.
they make batteries, and they make other components and things like that. This person's number one thing right now is how do I stand up operations in the Eurozone, and how I stand up operations on the western half of the United States. And they're an Asian company,
Okay.
but they're standing up divisions over here. And they've got to stand up, and you don't have a company without people to support it. And so the idea and issue of mobility is at the forefront of this person's mind, to the point where the CEO is having conversations with a moving company because this issue is logistical, right? And so I think those are the types of opportunities that we have to look for. And I think we have to really coach and supply the proper information
Yeah.
to our corporate client contacts so they can sit in that room prepared and not only be in the room, but can own the room.
That's a great question, and could challenge the global mobility individuals, and maybe those that are viewing now can put their comments in. What do they have to do to upskill, or what skills do they need to get a seat at that table? Do they need to be lawyers? Do they need to be registered immigration providers and all that kind of stuff, like tax professionals? Do they need all that stuff? What is it that's going to get them to that table?
Well, and who's to say that the global mobility professional has to be that person? Why can't they take their trusted providers into the room with them? Why can't they take their law firm, their tax professional, their logistics expert, and their relocation management company that brings it all together? Why can't
I
it
think
be
it would
a
reflect
5-person
poorly.
meeting? You think
I,
so, or
I
do
think
they
so,
just know
because
how to marshal resources?
imagine, Ben, imagine you walk into a room and you're bringing all your support behind you and you're saying, okay, these are the people that actually do everything. What's your boss going to say?
This is the team I've assembled of best-in-class service providers. I don't know. I mean, the CEO doesn't do it all himself. They have a CFO, they have a COO, there's CIO, right? I mean, they have a team of trusted advisors, and they marshal them and they rely on them for good information. They provide the vision, and the team executes. I could see a mobility person positioning themselves the same way, perhaps.
Interesting.
I don't know. It's my thought. I mean, I think we as service provider. I mean, you've been a service provider in this industry for a long time. Have you not felt like underutilized at times?
Yes and no, because I've always been on the front line, so I've had relations with the actual people that are moving. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, when I worked with individuals, I'd sit down for an hour to go through, their assessments, the surveys, all that kind of stuff, and it'd be 3 hours at their kitchen table talking about their stories, their background. So from that perspective, I always felt that I had a value or influence to impact the experience. From the corporate side, I think that's a good question to ask. Like, where do you think you can use your suppliers to your advantage?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it would be great. We got Vinny checking in here. Vinny, do you feel like suppliers can add more value? I mean, what are your thoughts there? I'd love to hear from you here. If we got any other corporate folks or, reformed corporate folks like William Taylor that want to weigh in
Thank
on
you, Will.
this? Love to know. Farrell Elliott saying late to the party. So happy to see you,
Hey,
Michael and
Pearl.
Ben. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I think we're going down kind of an interesting pathway here. Nicole Barilli, what's up? Mary Lee.
Hey, Merle.
Good to hear from Mary Lee here. We got a LinkedIn question here coming. Let's see. Before we got that, we got a comment here.
Oh, that went by too
Comment.
fast.
The comments from Rebecca Stevens says, I've always brought in the experts. They are the experts in their areas. Yeah, thank you. We've got here, let's answer a couple questions while people weigh in on that. Imagine how many mobility experts have been put on EAP hats have put on the EAP hat with transferees without the right skills, even with the best
So true.
intention. It can be hard. Yeah, how many times do people, relocation consultants or move coordinators or whatever, say, "Oh, I'm," or destination services consultants say, "Oh, I'm park counselor," right?
Yeah. I had one of them that she told me before in her program, they've had hundreds of individuals that she used to individually call every single one of them. And while that deserves a massive round of applause just to take that initiative to care about your employee basis around the world, it's also exactly like this question is like, that's kind of unreasonable to expect that someone that doesn't have that experience or the certification to be a mental health professional needs to be one.
Yeah. It's asking a lot. It's
It is
really,
asking a
and
lot.
it's dangerous, right? Because bad advice is worse than no advice sometimes.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting, but I mean, how many times have we talked to transferees and assignees who have been crying? How many times have we heard, oh, and I was talking to Mr. and Mrs. and oh gosh, they were crying on the phone, and you
Or you
know,
have to do the job on separate days because Mr. and Mrs. are not talking anymore.
oof, yeah,
Uh,
oof, yeah, for sure. Sandra saying this also made me think of the show you did a while back with the refugees settling in job assistance program. Can't remember the name, but you will, Ben. Was it Talent Beyond Boundaries? It might have been. I think it might have been a charity that works with refugees to find them jobs.
Interesting. That'd be great to connect with them.
Yeah, for sure. Sarah, great show. Sorry, late
Yeah.
to the party. Party. Is that how I say it? Party?
Party.
Let's see. Jason Hall, how are you leveraging your technology culturally?
Culturally. Interesting. So with our technology, we've built a HIPAA compliant program that allows for matching between the counselors and the actual employees. So kind of first and foremost, those sessions that they have, those video sessions are 100% confidential. And we have those requirements that we have to adhere to. However, we do use technology through different means to promote kind of localization information. This is one thing actually I'm interested to partner with people on. We have what we call destination guides, virtual destination guides, where we put together videos of the locations for everything from different areas that you consider as an expat. On our website, we have an example for London, which is a digital resource for getting to know that area. We also have a Beyond Borders podcast that we do where we interview with individuals who are living in those locations to talk about their experience to try to get that kind of information as much as possible. But I know there are some companies out there that are doing an amazing job. And I think that's an area for me that I look at. And Ben, you can comment on this, back to that kind of entrepreneur story, is you've got to focus on what fire to put out or what to build. Because if you try to do everything at once, it's just impossible. And I realized that while we have these destination guides, there's others that are doing similar technology that could be even better. And if they're focusing 100% on that, I'm all in. So, Jason, yeah, hit me up. Love to talk about that.
Jason is one of the best networkers, by the way, sidebar, in this industry. He's always in the comments. He's always repping, hardly home, but always repping. Jay Hall, USI Law. Okay. And he just networks his tail off. Shout out
Thank you,
to Jay
Jason. I
Hall.
feel like that question was a bit of a pitch, but thank you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, he'll serve you a softball just so you can crush it for sure. Karen Hale, Talent Beyond Boundaries is a great organization. Yeah, I think so too. That's pretty cool. I got to ask you. So you've been a service provider. Now you're an entrepreneur solving new problems in this industry. What advice would you give to a person relocating now, based on your experience?
Yeah, I mean, there's no one size fits all for sure. I would look at their situation, their demographic, what they're looking at. But I would say be intentional about it. And I'm stealing that quote from Oprah, so kudos to her. But everything you do, you have to be intentional about it. A professor from university told me one day when I was graduating, he said, "Listen, wherever you are, be all there." And I get what he was talking about because he was saying, whatever you put your hand in, whatever you put your focus on, that's where you are in the moment. Don't think about tomorrow. Don't think about the future. Like, you're in the moment now. That is life. That's where life happens. So I would say that if you're going on assignment, like, we did a podcast with an individual from a pharmaceutical from Brazil to London. We'll be airing that in a couple of days. And he was going for career growth. So he was strictly going for a 4-year assignment to get upskilled, to learn different, what he needed to learn to maximize his career. And he said very early on, it was hard to find his footing, so to speak, because he understood he was going on assignment, but he didn't have that perspective right away that, hey, this is a huge career step for me, and how can I maximize the benefit out of this? And it's down to simple things, it's maximizing your network, your everyday relationships, the people that you're talking to, you're communicating with. He chose to focus on his language skills and his relationships, and that's paid off for him in the last 4 years. So that's the one advice I would give, to summarize and try to be as generic as possible, is whatever you're going to do, just do it with intention, because you don't want to miss this opportunity and have 4 years go by and like, shoot, I wish I could have made more of it.
Yeah, that's a good point on a macro level, on a yearly level, but also on a micro level, moment by moment. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I catch myself, I'm in a meeting or whatever, and my mind's wandering about something else, and I'm not maximizing that moment, and I'm sure not solving anything for this other thing either. So I'm just kind of doing a really poor job at both at the same time. And so just being all in on that moment is really cool. I think it's important too from a family perspective. You come home from work and you're with your family or friends, and if you're still thinking about work, I mean, gosh, welcome to entrepreneurship. It never turns off. Have you felt that way yet, where it never turns off?
Oh my God. I've literally had nights at 2 a.m, and my husband would bring a tray of sliced oranges and apples, and it's like, you forgot to eat.
Yeah.
Shoot.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Because the ideas are coming. The ideas are just coming, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It really
for sure.
is.
Yeah. It. I don't know. It doesn't get better.
Yeah, but that's kind of back to the beginning point. Is like, it's really, you're never on your own, and you have to rely on networks and relationships and partnerships. And like, even what Jason just mentioned, I'd love to partner him. I hope we connect after this, because that's what really makes things successful. Awesome.
Yeah, and actually, Karen Hill also, here's a partnership for you. I've
Thank
got
you.
contacts
Karen,
at
thank
Talent
you.
Beyond Boundaries if you need, and they do a really nice job of promoting themselves too. So they could be a very nice strategic partner for you.
That's wonderful.
Mary Lee says, being seen as strategic, you need the consulting skills, and also not enough mobility groups track and show the cost savings annually in their programs, especially on the tax planning side, which gets CEOs and leaders attention. If you say if you save 7 million, you need to toot your team's horn. Yeah, I mean, you save $7 million, and then your CEO comes to you and says, "Hey, we got to cut 1 FTE from your team." Like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about? We just saved $7 million. We're not a cost center, we're a profit center.
Yeah. No, that's great, but I think that also, Marilee, focuses on too, like, what metrics are you monitoring? What are you observing and providing that proof of data back? I think that's super, super important. And that's something, I mean, I can talk individually. Unfortunately, I can't share publicly, but we found a niche that it doesn't have to be a cost add to your program. There's ways to have this provided and have these kind of support mechanisms that can do that, but you need to be tracking things. And one of the things that we look at is actually we call them assignment assessments. Whereas every time a customer comes through the platform, they have a session with their counselor, they finish that session, they're prompted with very short questions. We know people don't want to be there for 20 minutes doing questionnaires, 3 max, but it's based on the WHO's categorization of health and wellness. And I was very, very fortunate to have a psychologist from a university out in San Diego help develop these questionnaires for me. But it's asking along the process, not just one time, one point, how you're adapting. That information gets aggregated back to a dashboard that provides visibility. So if you want to tell your boss, listen, I've got people settling in quicker, I've got people that are retention rates are increasing because they're staying longer, they're more satisfied, that all really, really, really helps to paint a better picture. And I think that's something, as an industry, we're very, very good at the data metrics for when does the lease end, when does the passport expire, all that kind of stuff. But how
Right.
about the experience? Like, what are we doing to monitor and to track that? And how do we act?
Yeah, and quantifying those soft
Yeah.
costs from settling in and ramp up, and yeah, that's really where the ROI rub is. And it's showing an ROI has been the
Holy
holy
grail.
grail of this industry forever. In fact, I
Okay.
actually had an ERC session where I was like, okay, we're gonna dive in. I don't know. I'm always trying to do stuff that's like way bigger than my,
I love
you
it.
know, too big for my britches, as we say down in Texas.
Why not?
And yeah, I'll
The
tell
only
you why
box
not.
we are in is the one we created. So go beyond it.
Yeah, well, I was like, I'm gonna endeavor to demonstrate the ROI of a relocation program.
I love it.
And I went out and found this speaker to come in from the University of San Francisco. I'm like, I'm gonna go outside of our industry, I'm gonna get new ideas. I'm gonna go, and this person was known for doing ROI talks on talent programs. I'm like, okay, cool, close enough. Like you're in the right ballpark, now apply it to mobility. This guy was the worst speaker I've ever heard in my entire life. He was he was antiquated, he was
Yeah.
expensive, he was offensive.
Oh, gosh.
He had no, I mean, it was bad. And so yeah. So sometimes we think other, smarter people than us are working on this problem. No, no, sometimes they're not. Sometimes everybody just doesn't know the answer.
Everybody has their wheelhouse too, right?
Yeah, this guy didn't have a wheelhouse. I'll tell
You
you
know,
what.
actually, Ben, that's an interesting concept too. How do you place talent within your own organization as an entrepreneur when you are letting go of doing everything? Sometimes I got lucky, but I've had a lot of times where I'm like, all right, 2 weeks in, this ain't working. I'm sorry, goodbye. How do you do that? How do you find
Gary
the right people?
Gary V says fire fast,
Yeah.
and I don't know about that. I get what he's trying to say. I think that there's a repurposing. I think I'm a big fan of, like, sometimes people belong on the bus, but they need to sit in a different seat.
Yeah. I agree.
And
Yeah.
I think that sometimes is the answer. 'Cause sometimes you got the person with the right values and they have the right thing about them, but we went into this thinking, because sometimes we go and we put our own needs on
Mm,
someone else, and we say, oh my gosh, I need a tree trimmer, and I'm gonna go hire an electrician because they're handy, but they don't know how to cut trees. And I was really putting them in a bad spot. But 6 months later, we realized they're terrible at cutting trees. But now I'm having shorts in my lights over here. You know what? Hey,
yeah.
guess what? An opportunity open that's more aligned with your skill set. I'm gonna slide you over here and I'm gonna reopen the position of tree trimmer, that kind of a thing. That's a terrible analogy, but that's what you
No,
get.
it's fantastic. I love it. I mean, it reminds me of the one that is always attributed to Einstein, like if a fish judge itself by how it can climb a tree, like all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, if I could ask you in a formula or just a summary, what do you use to identify? Do you use disc assessments? What do you use to look at somebody and say, hey, this is not working beyond skill sets, right? But you're looking at fit, you're looking at all that kind of stuff to repurpose
Let
individuals.
me give you a secret.
Yeah.
CEOs suck at this.
Yeah.
There's studies that show, of all the people in an organization, CEOs use the fewest assessments to judge talent. So, for instance, if you're interviewing with a CEO, they're going to be the worst interview of everyone. They
Oh,
rely more often on the "would I have a beer with this person" test than
mm,
anybody else in the organization. And it's just what studies have shown. They use tests less, they use fewer interviews, they cut a lot of corners, they just trust their gut on stuff way
mm.
more because their gut has gotten them pretty far, to be honest with you. Which is why it's important that they delegate the process of assessing talent in their organization. So I'll tell you what I do. It's typical. I trust my gut, and if something's not working, I say, it's not working," and then I trust my gut to try to figure out what is working. Sometimes it
Yeah.
works, sometimes it doesn't work. I'll be honest. Now we do use strength finders. We all go through that as
Okay,
soon as
right.
somebody
Yeah.
new comes on
Is that
in the
the
org.
SGGI or something like that? Yeah.
Yeah, it's the Clifton Strength Finders thing, right?
Yeah.
And we like that, and that's cool, and we see what everybody's strengths are. But that tells you kind of more like what stuff to give that person. But the problem is you
Mm.
already hired them for a job and they have a job description. So any stuff you give them is kind of ancillary to their core job, right? So it's a little late in the game for that. I'm a huge fan of Culture Index, the CI. The
Okay.
problem with the CI for me is because we're also a recruitment firm. They won't license to us because they don't license to recruitment firms. But Culture Index CI is pretty awesome in the recruitment phase. But I think you just have to be willing to. You can't get married to titles and you can't get married to roles. You have to say, listen, we're all people here and we're all unique. And sometimes you're going to express a desire to do something or a skill for something that wasn't in your job description. And you may gravitate towards that. And we're an entrepreneurial, flexible, nimble organization. And our business model even changes. So your role's going to change. And it's happened, it's happened with Jana on our team, right? I mean, her roles changed a few times over a few years being with us. I mean, what I do on a day-to-day basis has changed. So, it happens quite a bit. I think nimbleness and flexibility are probably our number one strengths, and adaptability, our number one strengths as human beings. And I think we have to lean into that. I think sometimes we try to be so professional and so rigid in our thinking because we think rigidness and certainty is indicative of professionalism and being good at our job. But in actuality, being right, all that stuff, right? We try to like look confident, but the truth of the matter is I like to tell people, listen, we're just making this up as we go along. So I reserve the right to change my mind. And I just please give me grace, and I'll give you grace, and we'll just figure this thing out together.
I like that. I love that because it's really a true partnership. But where I'm at right now is I'm looking for skill gaps. So I hire people that are on our team that do things that I'm not good at, and they excel at that. So all the power to them, because I need that. I can't just be this one man show. And that can work to a certain degree, but as soon as you get past probably 5 to 6 individuals and you start building bigger teams, that's a concern that I have looking at. And
so let me help you with this real quick, okay? Because I'm going through this in my entrepreneur organization class right now. So we meet, hold each other accountable. So I think sometimes what we do is we design an org chart, just like we design a football roster or a baseball roster, right? And we say, okay, I need a shortstop, I need a third baseman, I need center field, right? You know what I mean? And we start putting people in here because we think on a chart that we need somebody in that spot.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like, life doesn't work like charts, right? At least in my world. I'm less logic, more feel kind of person. Maybe you see the world in charts. I don't. So what we do sometimes is we become overly prescriptive. And we stick people in there. What I prefer is this method of, it's a quadrant method, right? So you get a sheet of paper, and in one quadrant you have things that you love doing that you're great at. In one quadrant you have things that you like doing that you're good at. In one quadrant you have things that you don't like doing but you're good at. And in one quadrant you have things that you hate doing and you're bad at. And you put that on your desk for a week, and you write down all the stuff that you do, and you stick it in a quadrant.
Is that from Ray Dalio? I think I remember reading that.
Bro, I don't give nobody credit. I have no idea where this came from. Okay. You're lucky I even remember how to explain it. Okay. So you write that down, and at the end of the week, then you take a look at it and you say, okay, first I got to get rid of this crap right here. Then I got to get rid of this crap right here. And hopefully, God willing, I'm up here in this quadrant right here, which is shit that I love, that I'm great at. Yeah. And if I can live here, maybe, and it won't happen year 1, maybe year 3, if I'm living here and walking in my purpose and my highest and best value, like, the whole team is winning at that point.
I love that. And I love the gradualness and the grace along the road to get there. That's really cool.
It won't happen day 1. And it happens with scale. You have to scale the business. You have to scale the business profitably with margins in order to afford the people to do the stuff that you don't want to do or you're not good at.
Yeah.
So I would say make sure your pricing is right. Make sure your margins are there to support the sustainable growth of your company.
That's a great point. Thank you.
Yeah, this is great. Thanks for the questions too, because I love explaining this stuff, and I never really get a chance to. I got one comment here from Mary Lee, and then let's do some over-unders, okay?
Yep.
Mary Lee says, while COVID did help mobility to be seen as strategic partners, I agree with that. There's still the view from the company leaders that these programs are seen as more administrative. Sure. Yeah, I get it. They see mobility as 1-800 rental truck, as we all joke in the industry at sometimes. Yeah, I get it. We carry out the orders. We don't give them. I mean, that's fair, Mary Lee. Karen, right? It's unfortunate, and trusting your gut is good to a point, but you need to be cautious about unconscious biases. Yes, 100%. That's why CEOs, what do? They hire people that look like them, right? Birds of a feather flock together. So if it's the beer test, then I'm going to wake up one day and my board is going to be all white men of my age and went to my college.
There's a great analogy about that. I think it was in Maxwell's Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow, if I remember correctly. But basically, they do this study on judges, and they change one single factor, like something random, like their breakfast in the morning, and it actually will change the results on how many people they judge as guilty versus non-guilty. And Karen, to your point, that's absolutely true. It's the unconscious biases that you really, and almost that's kind of a direct distinction for your gut, right? It is an unconscious bias that you feel good with, but it's not necessarily true.
Yeah. And so in order to counteract unconscious biases is we have to have conscious counteractions to that, right? We have to say, okay, I know that if I don't check this, I'm going to end up hiring white guys who look like me, who are late millennials that listen to 90s hip hop and like to go to sports games and have a beer after work, right? So I need to go out on like intentionally and find people who still have my same values, because that's key. You want diversity of experience and diversity of background, but you want to have the same core values as a company. That's key. Okay.
Or even worldview, but same values.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, so our core values are truth, love, and fun, right? So I need people that check those 3 boxes. Pretty straightforward, simple stuff. But so I found Jana, right? And Jana, what's ironic is when we did it,
beautiful, amazing individual. She's
incredible,
so awesome.
Right? So dynamic, so incredible. Huge passion for DE&I, right? And that was her first job title, I think, with us was DE&I manager. Before we had anybody to include, it was DE&I manager, and because that was her purpose, and she walked in that, right? And she's still doing stuff with that. But my point is, ironically, you put us on a disc profile and we're like 90% the same person, except she is a Black Polish woman from Brazil, right?
Cool.
Yeah, I'm saying, but our personality traits are similar. So she brings in this incredible diversity of thought and experience, and the way she, approaches stuff. But still, we're actually almost too similar, right? So we actually work better apart than together, because we need people to counterbalance us, right? We don't need the same. So then we have to find different types of diversity. So we try, but it takes attention. To your point earlier, it takes intentionality, because if you do it by accident, that's when you get this like bro-y culture that everybody talks about, and it doesn't work, right?
No, it's not. And I think that diversity alone is just, it's the old iron sharpens iron kind of analogies. Like the more diverse point of views you have in the picture, the faster you can grow, the better you can be. You can find blind spots. You can improve yourself. You can improve your team. You can improve your business. And there's just so much value behind it.
It's like that was, they always say it's an African proverb, but it's like, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And I think that the diversity thing is the together, because I think you can go fast with a bunch of people that are like you, because you're all like the same. So your communication is really easy because you're all like the same type of person. And you all kind of agree on stuff because you see things the same way, but it'll burn out quicker because it's not built for the market, because the market isn't just people like you.
Yeah. Or that takes precedent, right? That dynamic, that relationship.
Yeah. And then it gets toxic later.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Because then you have problems where you have people in seats and now you can't move them because of that relationship's there. Because you can't move your brother on the bus, because it's too.
What are you gonna do it over dinner on Sunday, or
and then now you're not going to Thanksgiving together anymore because you had to fire them. I hear that story all the time, especially in the movie business. Sarah says, and the quality of decision making is improved with a diverse team. Yeah,
it's true. More factors, you have more information. More information leads to better decisions, right?
100%. I know we're over time, but let's get into some overrated, underrated. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
This is cool. Hit that like button one time. I'd love to know what you think about this crazy conversation we're having right now. Get in there. Overrated, underrated. Okay, Michael.
Yeah.
You know the rules? There's 2 rules.
I do indeed.
It's like Dave Portnoy, but except there's 2 rules. 2 rules. 1, I'm going to give you a topic. You are going to tell me if it is overrated or underrated. Those are your 2 acceptable answers. Understand?
Understood.
Okay,
Yes,
2. Second rule is I will tell you if you are correct. All right, let's play. Let's play. All right. Number 1, duty of care in global mobility, overrated or underrated?
Underrated.
What are you going to say, right? Overrated. Tell me why.
Depends on your perspective. I wouldn't say from the mobility person themselves, but I would say from the business.
All right, that's a softball. All right. Next one, you're right. Ding, ding, ding. 1-0.
Woo.
Next one, getting to know your neighbor.
Oh,
Neighbor.
And I love our neighbors. I would say overrated.
Woo, hello, here we go. Now we're talking. I love when people get a little controversial here. All right, why is it overrated, Michael Hughes?
Oh gosh, when it's close to home, it's easy to have conflicts, I would say. So getting to know them, you have to be very respectful of boundaries. And often we throw away boundaries thinking that we're being friendly, but actually we're creating a situation for down the line that is, when you start negotiating fence heights and who pays for what and what direction the fence goes, yeah, that gets messy real quick.
I love how we go on and on about DE&I and it doesn't apply to neighbors. It's like inclusion does not apply to neighbors.
My neighbors from West Texas, I love them. They're amazing family. They've been here 30 years. But we also have a very good relationship to talk about these hard topics openly and plainly. So I respect them for that.
Oh my gosh, I had the worst.
And I did pay for the fence.
Yeah, see, I knew there was some sort of trauma there. I had the worst neighbors in Michigan. I had this guy and his wife, these old couple, and I swear her name was Karen, and she would come over.
My neighbor's name's Karen. I'm not kidding.
God bless Karen Hale. We love you, Karen Hale. But this lady would come over to my house in the fall. She would blow her leaves into my yard. We had only pine trees. She had maple trees, and she's maple and oak, and she'd blow the maple and oak trees. She's like, "These are your leaves." I'm like, "I have pine tree. I don't even have leaves in my yard." She would blow them in there, and then in the wintertime, I would hand shovel a circular driveway because I'm an idiot, and she would snow blow the snow back from her driveway into my driveway.
Oh yeah.
This is the kind of people we're talking about. Okay. Oh, can't stand them. Now, my other neighbors were great. I mean, 90% of the neighborhood were great. And this is kind of a microcosm of society, right? You have 10% nut jobs. Sometimes they live next door, sometimes down the street, sometimes you never meet them. 10% nut jobs, and then 90% of people are good people. They just want good life for their families and whatever. And we have more alike than unalike, So, oh my gosh, Karen says I was about to send you bad emojis, bad cross. Send them, Karen. You're welcome. We love you, Karen. Exception that proves the rule, Karen. That's what I say. Janet Turner, with my neighbors. So strange. I'm trying to be more inclusive with my neighbors. What does that mean? Having them over for a little wood-fired pizza? You and Martin out in the back? Still need a pizza. All right, you know what? I'm going to give you this one. I love you. You took a really controversial stance here, overrated. I respect it. I'm going to give you 1.5 points for that. Okay. I'm going to give you bonus. I've never awarded bonus points in the history of Love and Relo. In our storied 5-year history, I've never awarded bonus points. You're getting a 0.5 point bonus. Okay. You're 2.5-0 right now. Let's get another one. Employee immediate integration.
Okay.
What the heck does that mean? I don't know what that means.
I think the idea is from a perspective of, is it overrated or underrated? How long it takes an employee to get integrated into their new location. And we're not talking about globally. We're talking domestic as well.
All right.
Because moving from Boston to Houston is an adjustment, and Detroit to Dallas is an adjustment too. So I would say it's absolutely underrated. Most conversations I have with folks, they're like, "Hey, we don't do much international." It's like, well, it's not just international, domestic as well. Uprooting your family, moving to a new location, it can be a shock. It's a transition, and it's not within 30 days. So actually, a small plug, if you don't mind, for BetterGo, we have our consultants stay with the employees for up to 6 sessions over 12 months.
Like in their home?
No. No, but we offer the program for 12 months over that period, because we know you don't settle in right away when you get there. 2 weeks in is very different from 6 months, and you're dealing with different things. You need different support at that time.
Interesting. All right.
I convince you?
Eh,
Metza.
yeah, Mets and Mets. I mean, I think employee median. I mean, yeah, it's underrated. You know, I call this kind of like the curve, right? Like the learning curves. Like how long until they're up to speed and they're productive in their job. I do think it's something we underestimate. So you know what? You're right. Underrated. Fine. You get it. All right. You're 3.5
Thank you,
and
sir.
0 right now. Okay. Another one. The primacy of cost in structuring support.
I would say overrated. And I found a way
Overrated.
to give my program for
What does it
no
mean?
cost. So
What does it mean? The primacy of cost in structuring support. Explain it.
cost always takes center point in discussions.
Oh gosh, yeah, prime. I got you. They're talking about like an old RMC. Yeah, I think
Not privacy.
yeah, why do we always start with cost, right? We always wonder how much, right? I mean, that's always the kiss of death, and then you kind of like, oh, let me tell you about this amazing service. Well, how much? Oh man, here we go. Yeah. Why do we always start with that? You know why we start with that? Because we're simple creatures, and it's the easiest thing to understand. It's the most quantifiable metric in the whole thing. Is how many dollars is it?
I agree. And if that's the case, let's be open. What do you have spend? What are budgets? What's the story here? Let's talk about it back and forth. And I think that can be a productive conversation rather than a showstopper. But I do think having it come up in the front I mean, at least for the last couple of
Yeah,
years, probably more driven by
you're
COVID.
right. This is overrated. 100% overrated. 4.5 and 0. Hit that like button.
Woo!
Give him a hand clap. Let's root for him. Let's give him a cheers. Hope he doesn't blow it on the last leg here. It's been known to happen before. He's pitching a perfect game. Don't go near him on the bench. Okay, he's on a heater. Let's see what the last one has for us. Reverse culture shock. Overrated or underrated?
Dude, totally underrated.
Underrated. Oh, you know what?
You gotta agree with that.
You, my friend, pitched a perfect game here. You're right. It is underrated. Reverse culture shock. You know what? I didn't really think this was a thing. I'm an American. I never lived nowhere, whatever. I didn't think this was a thing. And then I talked to Jana on my team. This is why diversity is important, because all these different experiences. And she experienced reverse culture shock. She grew up in Brazil. She moved to West Virginia to do like college and stuff. And then she lived in Tampa for a while. And then when she came back, she experienced reverse culture shock. It was an emotional experience. She tried to get her phone hooked up. It was just comically awful. Her Samsungi phone. I mean, it was just bad. And her mom was like laughing. I mean, it was like nobody understands it. It's a real thing. Did you experience this, Michael Hughes?
Oh my God, yeah. So we on our Beyond Borders podcast, we just did one with Lauren she used to be with J&J, and she went over to Germany with her husband on relocation, and she's going through that right now. So there's a pretty good topic and discussion about that. But I was so afraid of reverse culture shock, I moved to Texas instead of going back to Boston.
Wow.
And I love it here. I mean, I'm absolutely in love with it. I'm glad we made a good decision. But that was the primary factor. I mean, we looked at COLA, we looked at all that kind of stuff, but then you have to understand when you're away from something for so long, in your mind, people haven't changed. And in their mind, you haven't changed, but life has happened to both of us.
Everything's changed.
And then you try to fit back into that, the same old haunts, the same old roads, it's
Friend
very,
groups,
very tough
family,
to do.
yeah.
So that was one thing we decided, hey, if we're going to go, we're going into a place that's going to be new for the both of us, because my husband, he's Chinese national, etc. When we came back at the time, we were really concerned about not just culture shock for him, but hey, if this is my country, so to speak, I'm going to be going 90, you're going to be like 10, 15 miles an hour trying to figure things out. Let's get on the same plane here. Let's figure things out together. Everything's new, everything's fresh. So I would say it was hugely important in our decision to come back home.
I didn't even think about that, right? If your husband is Chinese, like it reminds me of when I got off the cruise ship in the Bahamas, and they wanted me to rent a scooter, and I was like 3 pina coladas deep, and I'm trying to like drive the scooter over in the Bahamas, and I'm like crashing into the fence. That's probably how he feels. And you're over here just like, cruising in a Lambo.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's important.
Yeah. Change of version. Great point.
Yeah.
Mara Lee saying Bill McDermott's quote, CEO of ServiceNow. We're in a world now that is all about people. We are in a truly human moment where a connection that doesn't absolutely lean into people will go nowhere. That's super interesting. Kind of reminds me of a conversation I was having right before the show. This is a lot of fun. This is a lot of fun. This has been a amazing show, Michael Hughes. I want to leave you with the final. I know we're over time here. People have been incredibly patient with us. You guys are amazing out there. More people have joined as we've been going on, which means we're actually interesting, reasonably interesting at least. Hit that like button one more time. Michael Hughes, leave us with a final thought.
You asking me? Sorry.
Yeah, leave us with a final thought.
Gosh, man, that's tough. Final thought is for your relocations, make sure you're looking at not just the practicality, but the experience, the emotional experience, and what you're putting families through and what's going to get them through that.
Yeah, it's a great reminder. This is it's been a fun week of shows this week. Michael, we ended on a really high note with you. Thanks for being here. Thanks everybody who's watched it as well. We wouldn't have a show without you. We're in our 5th year now, which is bananas.
Amazing.
And Michael, you've been on a couple times, and it's great to have you here. I'm loving what you're doing with BetterGo and all the cool entrepreneurial stuff and all the problems you're solving out there. So thank you so much for making time for us today.
And thank you for the opportunity, man. It's wonderful to be here.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure. And everybody gets a car today, courtesy of BetterGo. So look under your seats, just like Oprah. You all won a new car.
Give them Uber credits.
Yeah, exactly. give them some Uber credits. There you go. Love it. It's a startup. What do you expect? Anyway, hey, thanks everybody. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.